Captain Jake Morrison sipped his morning coffee as he watched the stars drift past the bridge windows of the USS Horizon. The exploration vessel had been his home for 12 years now, and every morning brought the same peaceful routine that had made humanity famous across the galaxy. No weapons charging, no battle alerts, just the gentle hum of engines carrying them toward their next diplomatic mission. "Captain, we're receiving a priority message from the Zephyrian Council," announced Lieutenant Amy Foster from the communications station. Her voice carried the same calm professionalism that marked every human crew member. After a century of peaceful contact with alien species, humans had perfected the art of being helpful without being threatening. Jake set down his cup and walked to the center of the bridge. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency. At the science station, Dr. Lisa Harper analyzed soil samples from their last planetary survey, looking for ways to help local farmers improve their crops. Commander Sam Rodriguez reviewed cultural protocols for their upcoming visit to the Centauri colonies, where 3 different species had requested human mediation in a trade dispute. "Put it through, Amy," Jake said, settling into his captain's chair. The main screen flickered to life, showing the familiar blue-scaled face of Ambassador Veltar, one of the Zephyrian representatives Jake had worked with many times before. "Captain?" Morrison, the ambassador's translator, converted his musical tones into standard English. "I hope this message finds you well. The Council has approved your proposal for the Cultural Exchange Program on Kepler Station. We are eager to begin sharing our poetry with human children, as you suggested." Jake smiled. 2 months ago, he had noticed that Zephyrian children seemed fascinated by human storytelling techniques during a routine diplomatic visit. A few conversations later, and now they had approval for the first interspecies creative writing program in the Outer Rim territories. It was exactly the kind of small, positive step that had built humanity's reputation as the galaxy's peacemakers. That's wonderful news. Ambassador, Dr. Harper has been working with our education specialists to develop age-appropriate translation protocols. Lisa looked up from her console with a grin. The preliminary tests show that Zephyrian emotional expression patterns actually enhance human narrative structure. The children are going to love learning from each other. This was how humanity operated now. They found ways to help, to build bridges between species, to solve problems through cooperation rather than force. It had taken decades to earn this level of trust from the galactic community, but the results spoke for themselves. Human space was peaceful, prosperous, and growing through invitation, rather than conquest. Jake's thoughts were interrupted by a soft chime from the navigation console. "Captain," called Ensign Bobby Chun, "we're approaching the New Haven system. Colony Administrator Sullivan is requesting permission to come aboard when we arrive." New Haven was one of humanity's success stories, a thriving colony world where 50,000 humans lived alongside members of 6 different alien species. The settlement had started as a simple mining operation but had grown into something remarkable under Kate Sullivan's leadership. She had turned it into a model of interspecies cooperation with mixed neighborhoods, integrated schools, and shared cultural centers. "Of course. Tell Administrator Sullivan we'll be happy to host her," Jake replied. "And ask the galley to prepare some of that Andromedan fruit tea she enjoys." The USS Horizon dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the New Haven system, and Jake felt the familiar sense of pride that came with visiting human colonies. Through the viewports, he could see the orbital stations that handled trade between dozens of worlds. Cargo ships from across the galaxy moved in orderly patterns, their holds filled with everything from Terran wheat to Rigelian crystal formations. "Beautiful, as always," murmured Sam Rodriguez, joining Jake at the forward viewport. "Sometimes I can hardly believe we built all this through handshakes and trade agreements." "That's the human way," Jake replied. "We learned a long time ago that making friends works better than making enemies." Dr. Lisa Harper approached with her daily reports. "Captain, the biological surveys from our last 3 stops are ready for transmission to the Science Council. The vegan colonies are reporting a 20% increase in crop yields using the soil enhancement techniques we developed with the Centaurians, and the medical supplies we delivered to the Tau Ceti research station have helped them develop treatments for the neural plague affecting the Outer Rim worlds, added Sam. 3 more species have requested similar assistance. Jake nodded, reviewing the information on his personal tablet. This was what humanity did best now. They solved problems, shared knowledge, and helped their neighbors thrive. The old days of conflict and competition seemed like ancient history, stories from a time when humans were still learning how to live peacefully with others. A transport shuttle approached the horizon, carrying Administrator Kate Sullivan from New Haven's surface. Jake made his way to the shuttle bay to greet her personally, as was customary for such visits. Kate emerged from the craft looking every bit the successful colonial administrator, her practical clothing and confident demeanor reflecting the no-nonsense approach that had made New Haven so successful. "Captain Morrison, good to see you again," Kate said, extending her hand in the traditional human greeting. "I hope you have time to visit the surface while you're here. The new agricultural complex is producing some amazing results, and the Zephyrian families have been asking about you since your last visit. I'd love to see what you've been building down there," Jake replied as they walked toward the bridge. "The reports we've been getting suggest that New Haven might become the model for future colony development," Kate beamed with pride. "We've got families from 7 different worlds living together now, and the children are growing up truly bilingual. Some of them speak 4 or 5 languages fluently. It's exactly what we hoped for when we started this project." As they reached the bridge, Jake felt the deep satisfaction that came with successful human endeavors. This was their role in the galaxy now, and they had embraced it completely. They were the mediators, the builders, the species that others called when they needed help solving problems peacefully. "Dr. Harper," Jake called, "would you mind showing Administrator Sullivan the biological data from the Kepler system? I think she'd be interested in the atmospheric compatibility studies." "Of course, Captain," Lisa replied, gesturing toward her science station. "Kate, you're going to love what we found. The soil composition data suggests that New Haven's agricultural techniques could work on at least 12 other worlds in this sector." Jake watched his crew share their discoveries with genuine enthusiasm. This was humanity at its best, using their knowledge and skills to help others thrive. They had found their place in the galaxy through patience, cooperation, and an unwavering commitment to peaceful solutions. Outside the viewport, New Haven turned slowly in space, its cities glowing with the warm light of a thriving civilization. Children of multiple species played in parks designed by human architects, while their parents worked together in factories and farms that fed dozens of worlds. It was perfect, it was peaceful, and it was about to end. The attack came at dawn on New Haven, when most families were having breakfast together in their mixed-species communities. Kate Sullivan was reviewing the morning agricultural reports when the orbital defense grid started screaming warnings. That made no sense. The sensors showed massive objects approaching faster than anything in the known galaxy, but they registered as organic rather than mechanical. "Get me a visual on those contacts," Kate ordered from the colony command center. Her coffee forgotten as technicians scrambled to process the impossible readings. The main screen flickered to life, showing shapes that hurt to look at directly. They moved like living things but were the size of cities, with surfaces that seemed to shift and flow as if made from liquid nightmare. Lieutenant Tim Brady, her communications officer, turned pale as he received incoming transmissions. "Administrator, we're getting distress calls from the outer monitoring stations. They're reporting total system failures before going silent. Whatever those things are, they're shutting down everything they encounter." Kate activated the colony-wide emergency broadcast system, her voice carrying to every home, school, and workplace on New Haven. "This is Administrator Sullivan. All residents proceed immediately to designated evacuation points. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." The response was everything Kate had hoped for from their integrated community. Human families grabbed their Zephyrian neighbors' children when the parents were at work. Andromedan teachers carried Entire classes of mixed-species students toward the transport ships. The evacuation procedures they had practiced monthly for years kicked in automatically, but nobody had ever imagined they would face anything like this. The first bioship entered New Haven's atmosphere like a falling mountain. Kate watched through the command center's reinforced windows as it descended toward the eastern residential district, where 5,000 people lived in carefully planned neighborhoods designed to accommodate different species' needs. The ship's landing created a shockwave that shattered windows 50 kilometers away. What emerged from the bioship defied every scientific understanding Kate possessed. The creatures flowed like liquid metal but moved with predatory intelligence. They didn't simply kill the colonists they encountered, they dissolved them completely, breaking down organic matter at the molecular level and absorbing it into their own mass. Buildings, plants, people, everything organic simply ceased to exist wherever the creatures touched. The transport ships are loading as fast as possible, reported Chief Engineer Nancy Walsh over the communication system, her voice strained with effort. But we're running out of time. These things are moving faster than anything we've seen. Kate coordinated the evacuation with mechanical precision, but inside she felt a growing horror as district after district went silent on her communications board. The eastern residential area vanished first, then the agricultural complex where human and alien families had worked together for decades. Each lost signal represented thousands of lives, including many of the children she had watched grow up in their peaceful mixed community, the Zephyrian Cultural Center, where just yesterday, children had been preparing for the poetry exchange program with Earth, disappeared in minutes. The medical facility where Dr. Harper's agricultural research had helped feed 6 different worlds simply melted away as if it had never existed. The integrated schools where young humans learned alien languages alongside their new friends became empty craters filled with an oily substance that made the air itself feel wrong. "Administrator," called Tim Brady, his voice breaking, "we've lost contact with evacuation point 7. That's where the Morrison family was stationed with their Centaurian neighbors." Kate closed her eyes for just a moment, remembering 8-year-old Joey Morrison teaching Centaurian children how to play baseball last week. When she opened them again, her expression had hardened into something that would have surprised anyone who knew her as the gentle administrator who solved problems through cooperation and understanding. "Patch me through to any ships in the system," she ordered, "all frequencies maximum power." The communication system crackled to life, broadcasting Kate's voice across space to anyone who might be listening. "This is New Haven Colony to any vessels receiving this transmission. We are under attack by unknown hostiles. Repeat, New Haven is under attack. Whatever these things are, they're dissolving everything organic they encounter. If anyone is receiving this message, do not approach the system. I repeat, do not approach the system." Through the command center's windows, Kate could see the bioships spreading across New Haven's surface like an infection. The creatures that poured from them moved with horrible purpose, systematically consuming every trace of the life that 50,000 beings had built together over decades. The parks where children played, the markets where families shopped, the homes where different species had learned to live as neighbors. All of it was disappearing into an expanding pool of organic matter that fed the growing alien mass. "Administrator," Nancy Walsh's voice came through the speakers with desperate urgency. "The transport ships are full, but we've only evacuated maybe 15% of the population. The bioships are blocking the remaining evacuation routes." Kate made a decision that went against every diplomatic instinct she had developed over 20 years of peaceful administration. "Order all transport ships to launch immediately. Do not wait for full capacity. Get whoever you can away from here now." The evacuation ships lifted off from New Haven spaceports with whatever colonists they could carry, but Kate could see on her screens that most of the population was trapped on the surface. The bioships had surrounded the major population centers, and their creatures were systematically processing every living thing they encountered. In the final minutes before the command center itself came under attack, Kate sent one last transmission across space. Her voice was steady despite the horror surrounding her, carrying the weight of 50,000 lives lost to something that had no interest in negotiation, cooperation, or peaceful coexistence. This is Administrator Kate Sullivan of New Haven. Colony Final Transmission. The attackers show no interest in communication. They consume all organic matter they encounter and use it to grow larger and stronger. We tried to evacuate, but most colonists could not escape in time. The colony is lost. To anyone receiving this message, these creatures represent a threat to all organic life in the galaxy. Warn everyone you can. Tell them what happened here. Tell them that sometimes peace isn't enough. The transmission ended as the command centers. Walls began to dissolve around Kate Sullivan, and New Haven joined the growing mass of organic matter that would fuel the next phase of the void. Swarms expansion across human space. In orbit above the dying world, the bioships grew larger and more numerous, preparing for their next target. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the ruins of what had been New Haven Colony, his boots crunching on the crystallized remains of buildings that had housed 50,000 people just 3 days ago. The USS Horizon's landing party moved carefully through the wasteland, their environmental suits protecting them from the toxic atmosphere that lingered where the bioships had fed. Dr. Lisa Harper knelt beside a strange formation that might once have been a school playground. Her scanner readings showed traces of organic compounds broken down to their basic molecular structure, then abandoned when the attackers moved on to more fertile ground. Jake, this is impossible. They didn't just kill everything here, they processed it, turned living beings into raw materials and consumed what they needed. Any survivors? Jake asked, though he already knew the answer from the complete silence that surrounded them. None, confirmed Commander Sam Rodriguez, returning from a sweep of the residential districts. We found evacuation ships that launched, but less than 8,000 people escaped. The rest. He gestured helplessly at the transformed landscape where nothing remained but mineral deposits and crystallized waste products. Jake activated his communication system, connecting to the other human vessels that had arrived to investigate New Haven's fate. 12 colonies had gone silent in the past week, all reporting similar attacks before their transmissions ended. The pattern was always the same: massive bioships appearing without warning, creatures that dissolved all organic matter they encountered, and complete consumption of everything that had once lived. All ship commanders, this is Morrison, Jake broadcast. Prepare for immediate departure. We need to get this information to Earth Command before these things hit another colony. The journey back to Earth took 18 hours at maximum faster than light speed, but it felt like an eternity to Jake and his crew. Lisa Harper worked continuously in her laboratory, analyzing samples from New Haven and trying to understand what they were facing. Sam Rodriguez reviewed every diplomatic protocol in the human archives, searching for any precedent for dealing with a species that showed no interest in communication or negotiation. Earth's orbital stations buzzed with activity as emergency. Sessions convened in the Human Colonial Council chambers. President Maria Santos had called together every human leader from across the galaxy, along with representatives from allied species who were growing increasingly concerned about the expanding threat. Jake stood before the assembled council, his uniform still carrying dust from New Haven's dead surface. Behind him, a holographic display showed the path of destruction the bioships had carved through human space. 12 colonies consumed, nearly 2 million people dead or missing, and the attacks were accelerating. The enemy shows no interest in communication, Jake reported, his voice carrying the weight of everything he had witnessed. Commander Rodriguez attempted contact using every known peaceful greeting in over 300 languages. Their response was a psychic pulse that damaged our ship's systems and left the entire crew with nightmares for days. President Santos studied the tactical displays with growing alarm. The bioships were moving in a coordinated pattern, consuming human colonies and using the organic matter to fuel rapid reproduction. Intelligence reports suggested that each successful attack doubled the size of their fleet within hours. Admiral Tony Clark, head of Earth's Defense Forces, presented the military assessment that everyone had been dreading. Our conventional weapons are useless against these things. They adapt to energy weapons, they regenerate from kinetic damage, and they actually grow stronger when we destroy their smaller ships. Every battle makes them more powerful. What about our allies? Asked President Santos. Can the coalition forces provide assistance? The Zephyrians have already begun evacuating their border worlds, reported Ambassador Helen Price. The Centaurians are pulling their fleets back to defensive positions. 3 other species have formally requested permission to relocate their populations away from the affected sectors. Jake felt a cold anger building as he listened to the reports. Humanity's allies, the species they had helped and protected for over a century, were abandoning them to face this threat alone. The peaceful cooperation that humans had worked so hard to build was crumbling in the face of an enemy that understood only consumption and growth. President Santos activated a secure holographic display that required genetic confirmation to access. The image showed a massive facility buried deep beneath Earth's surface, its corridors sealed and dark for over 2 centuries. The Prometheus protocols were classified at the highest level after the corporate wars ended in 2156. The research conducted there was deemed too dangerous for any civilized species to possess. What kind of research? Asked Jake, though something in his gut already knew he wasn't going to like the answer. Dr. Richard Kane materialized via holographic projection from his secured laboratory. He looked exactly like what he was, a man who had spent decades thinking about ways to completely destroy other forms of life. His pale eyes held knowledge that made even hardened military officers uncomfortable. Extinction-level warfare, Dr. Kane said simply. Not just weapons to win battles, but tools to ensure that defeated enemies could never threaten anyone again. The research was sealed because we decided that peaceful humanity had no use for such things. President Santos looked around the council chamber, meeting the eyes of every human leader present. Our children are dying. Our colonies are being consumed by creatures that see us only as food. We tried diplomacy, we tried negotiation, we tried understanding. They ate our people as their answer. The vote was held in complete silence. Jake watched as every representative pressed their approval on the secure voting system. There were no speeches, no debates, no discussions about morality or consequences. The decision was unanimous. Humanity would open the seals they had placed on their own darker nature. Dr. Kane, President Santos said formally, you are hereby authorized to activate the Prometheus protocols. Begin immediate production and deployment of all classified weapon systems. Dr. Kane's smile was the most terrifying thing Jake had ever seen. Ma'am, I've been waiting for this day since I was put in storage. How quickly do you need these bioships eliminated from existence? Yesterday would be preferable. President Santos replied. Jake volunteered the USS Horizon as the first test platform for Dr. Kane's weapons. As his exploration vessel was retrofitted with devices that existed at the very edge of physics, Lisa Harper made a discovery that changed everything. Buried in human genetic material were traces of something ancient, markers that suggested humanity's ancestors had faced extinction-level threats before. Jake, Lisa said as she shared her findings, we weren't always peaceful. The genetic evidence suggests that humans survived on Earth because they were the only species capable of absolute warfare. Every other intelligent life form on our homeworld was completely eliminated in some ancient conflict. As the USS Horizon prepared for its first engagement with the bioships using humanity's forbidden weapons, Jake realized that they weren't becoming something new. They were remembering what they had always been underneath the civilization and diplomacy. The galaxy was about to rediscover why humanity had been alone on Earth. The first test of Dr. Kane's weapons happened in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, where a Void Swarm scout fleet had been detected moving toward Earth's outer colonies. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Horizon. But his ship no longer resembled the peaceful exploration vessel it had been. Just 2 weeks ago, where diplomatic communication arrays had once reached out to make friends across the galaxy, There were now weapons that could twist space itself into knots. The cargo bays that had carried medical supplies and cultural gifts now held devices that Dr. Kane described as reality adjustment tools, with the casual tone of a man discussing garden equipment. "Captain," reported Lieutenant Amy Foster, her voice steady despite the strangeness of their new situation, "we have visual contact with the bioships. 3 large vessels and approximately 40 smaller craft, all moving in standard void swarm hunting formation." Jake studied the tactical display showing the enemy fleet. Each bioship was easily 10 times the size of the horizon, their surfaces rippling with the same organic flow that had consumed New Haven. Under normal circumstances, any sane starship captain would have retreated immediately and called for massive reinforcements. "Dr. Kane," Jake said into his communication system, "are your toys ready for field testing?" The response came from the weapons control room, where Dr. Kane had installed himself with the enthusiasm of a child on Christmas morning. "Captain, I've been waiting 2 centuries to see these theories put into practice. Begin whenever you're ready." Commander Sam Rodriguez, now serving as tactical officer instead of diplomatic liaison, targeted the largest bioship in the enemy formation. "Jake, are you sure about this? We don't know what these weapons will actually do in combat." "We know what conventional weapons do against these things," Jake replied grimly. "They make them stronger. Let's see how they handle something unconventional." The first weapon Dr. Kane had installed was something he called a quantum dissolution beam that worked by convincing matter that it had never existed in the first place. Jake gave the firing order, and a pulse of energy that looked like twisted starlight reached out toward the lead bioship. The effect was immediate and horrifying. The bioship didn't explode or break apart, it simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, a massive organic vessel filled with creatures that had consumed millions of lives. And the next moment there was empty space that reality quickly forgot had ever been occupied. "Direct hit," Sam reported, his voice filled with amazement and disgust. "The target has been completely eliminated. No debris, no energy signature, no trace that it was ever there." The remaining void swarm vessels reacted with something that might have been panic if such creatures were capable of fear. They scattered in all directions, but Jake was no longer the diplomatic captain who had once shared coffee with alien ambassadors while discussing cultural exchange programs. "Target the fleeing vessels," Jake ordered. "Don't let any of them escape to report what happened here." For the next 30 minutes, the USS Horizon hunted the surviving bioships through the asteroid field with methodical precision. Each weapon Dr. Kane had developed served a specific purpose in what he cheerfully called comprehensive enemy elimination. Some devices erased matter from existence, others convinced biological tissue that it should dissolve itself, and a few simply made portions of space-time forget that certain objects had ever been present. Dr. Lisa Harper, monitoring from the science station, watched her instruments record the systematic annihilation of creatures that had seemed unstoppable just hours before. "Jake, the quantum signatures are unlike anything in our databases. These weapons don't just kill, they prevent the target from having ever existed in the first place." "Good," Jake replied with a coldness that would have surprised his former diplomatic contacts. "Make sure you document everything. We'll need to know how to replicate these results across the entire human fleet." The last bioship tried to escape toward the outer system, but Jake pursued it personally. The chase lasted 2 hours as the USS Horizon followed the fleeing vessel through 3 different star systems, using weapons that warp space to prevent faster-than-light travel. When they finally cornered it in a nebula, Jake ordered his crew to spend the next 6 hours systematically dismantling it piece by piece. "This is for New Haven," Jake announced over the ship's communication system as they dissolved the bioships. "Outer hull. This is for the Morrison family and every other family these things consumed." News of the successful test spread through human space faster than light-speed communication. Within days, every human vessel from cargo haulers to hospital ships was being retrofitted with Dr. Kane's impossible weapons. The peaceful builders that other species had known for over a century were transforming into something that made their former allies deeply uncomfortable. Admiral Tony Clark coordinated the conversion of humanity's civilian fleet from his command center on Earth's orbital station. Exploration vessels became reality-warping dreadnoughts. Medical ships transformed into mobile weapons platforms that could delete enemy vessels from existence. Even the small courier ships that carried mail between colonies were equipped with devices that could unravel matter at the quantum level. President Maria Santos addressed the galaxy in a broadcast that reached every known species in the coalition. Her words were calm and measured, but there was something in her tone that made diplomatic translators struggle to find appropriate terms in alien languages. For over a century, humanity has chosen to be builders, healers, and peacemakers, President Santos said, standing before the Earth flag in her official office. We were happy to fill that role because we believed that cooperation and understanding could solve any problem. The Void Swarm has taught us that this belief was incorrect. The counterattack began at the ruins of New Haven, where Captain Jake Morrison led a fleet of converted human ships against the main Void Swarm force. But instead of the careful, measured tactics humanity was known for, they employed strategies that made their alien allies send increasingly worried messages to Earth's government. Human ships didn't just destroy enemy vessels, they hunted down every fragment to ensure nothing survived to regenerate. When bioships attempted to retreat, human forces pursued them across entire star systems, cornering them in nebulae and asteroid fields before spending days systematically dismantling them at the molecular level. Dr. Lisa Harper, once a peaceful xenobiologist who studied alien flowers, now commanded research teams that dissected captured Void Swarm creatures while they were still alive. Her reports, filled with clinical descriptions of systematic torture disguised as scientific inquiry, disturbed even hardened military personnel from other species who had fought in dozens of wars. Commander Sam Rodriguez, who had once spent his career finding peaceful solutions to interspecies conflicts, developed tactics specifically designed to cause maximum psychological trauma to the Void Swarm's collective consciousness. Human ships broadcast the death screams of captured creatures across all frequencies, turning each battle into a weapon against the enemy's mental stability. The tide of war turned completely within weeks. Void Swarm fleets that had once seemed unstoppable now fled at the first detection of human ships on their sensors. But humanity didn't stop with mere victory. They began hunting their retreating enemies across the galaxy, following them into the darkest corners of space with the patience of apex predators, who had finally found worthy prey. Coalition species, who had once seen humans as gentle builders, now watched in growing horror as their former allies demonstrated exactly why they had been the only intelligent species to survive on their homeworld. The final battle took place in the galactic core, where the Void Swarm's ancient homeworld spawned new horrors by the billions every hour. President Maria Santos stood on the bridge of the USS Retribution, a vessel that bore no resemblance to anything humanity had built during their peaceful centuries. The ship's hull was covered in weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics, and its crew moved with the cold efficiency of predators who had found their natural prey. Captain Jake Morrison commanded the orbital bombardment from his position aboard the Horizon, coordinating with hundreds of other human vessels that had followed the retreating Void Swarm to this final stronghold. Each ship in the human fleet carried enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems, but today they would use it all on a single world. Dr. Kane, President Santos spoke into her communication system, are your planet killer weapons ready for deployment? The response came from the Retribution's weapons bay, where Dr. Kane had installed his most devastating creation, a device that could convince reality itself that certain objects should stop existing. Madam President, I've been waiting my entire career for this moment. The quantum erasure array is fully charged and ready to remove this world from history. Below them, the Void Swarm homeworld writhed with activity as countless bioships launched from its surface. The planet itself seemed alive, its continents shifting and flowing as massive breeding pools produced new creatures every second. This was the source of the plague that had consumed 12 human colonies and murdered 2 million people. Dr. Lisa Harper, monitoring from the science station, watched her sensors detect life signs beyond counting. The planetary mass is increasing every minute. Whatever they're doing down there, they're converting the entire world into breeding material for more bioships. Not for much longer, Jake replied, targeting the planet's core with weapons that existed at the very edge of scientific possibility. All ships begin planetary bombardment. I want this world and everything on it erased from existence. The attack began with conventional reality warping weapons that deleted chunks of the planet's surface. Mountains disappeared, oceans vanished into quantum nothingness, and entire continents simply ceased to exist as human weapons convinced spacetime that they had never been there. But the void swarm world adapted and regenerated, growing new landmasses from the organic matter of its consumed victims. The conventional erasure weapons aren't enough, reported Commander Sam Rodriguez from the tactical station. The planet is rebuilding itself faster than we can destroy it. President Santos made the decision that would haunt her dreams for the rest of her life. Dr. Kane, activate the complete timeline deletion array. Remove this world from history itself. The weapon that Dr. Kane fired was not visible to human eyes, but every person in the human fleet felt it in their bones. Reality shuddered as the device reached backward through time, convincing the universe that the void swarm homeworld had never existed in the first place. The planet, its moons, every bioship in orbit, and all traces of the civilization that had spawned the galaxy's greatest threat simply vanished from existence. Where a world had been moments before, there was now empty space that the universe quickly forgot had ever contained anything at all. Future archaeologists would find no evidence that this system had ever held a planet, because according to history, it never had. Complete timeline erasure successful, Dr. Kane reported with satisfaction. The target world and all associated biological matter have been removed from existence across all temporal vectors. They never were, they are not now, and they never will be. Jake Morrison checked his sensors and confirmed what they all knew: the void swarm was extinct. Every individual killed, every bioship dissolved, every spawning ground sterilized at the quantum level. It wasn't just victory, it was absolute annihilation, so complete that future generations would never know the enemy had ever existed. The war was over, but the aftermath proved more challenging than the fighting. Admiral Tony Clark struggled to convince human commanders to decommission weapons that had proven so effective. Many officers had grown fond of possessing devices that could erase problems from existence, and several requested permission to keep their reality warping equipment for future emergencies. The crew of the USS Horizon returned to Earth as heroes, but Jake Morrison found himself unable to sleep without dreaming of bioships dissolving into quantum foam. Dr. Lisa Harper continued her scientific research, though her methods now included detailed plans for the rapid elimination of any species that might pose a threat to human interests. Commander Sam Rodriguez discovered that he could no longer negotiate disputes without first calculating how quickly the opposing parties could be removed from existence if diplomacy failed. The skills they had developed during the war were not easily forgotten, and the galaxy had noticed coalition species began establishing safety zones around human space, claiming they needed room for cultural development but actually maintaining buffer territories between themselves and their former allies. Trade agreements were quietly canceled as alien governments decided that economic cooperation with humanity carried unacceptable risks. The Zephyrian ambassador, who had once shared poetry with human children, now required armed escorts when visiting human stations. The Centaurian Council requested that all future diplomatic meetings be conducted via long-range communication rather than face-to-face contact. 3 minor species applied for emergency relocation, assistance to move their homeworlds farther from human territory. President Maria Santos addressed the galaxy one final time from Earth's orbital platform. Her words transmitted to every known species in the galactic community. We did what needed to be done. We became what we needed to become to protect our children and our homes. We'll become it again if we have to. Kate Sullivan returned to rebuild New Haven with a new understanding of humanity's place in the galaxy. The colony welcomed visitors from other species, but they arrived in small numbers and never stayed long. Human children played in parks, surrounded by automated defense systems that could sterilize entire star systems if anyone threatened there. Peaceful Games. Jake Morrison retired to a quiet farm on Earth, growing vegetables and raising livestock in the peaceful countryside. But he kept the USS Horizon's weapon systems on standby in a secured facility, maintained and ready for immediate deployment. Because while humanity had returned to building schools and hospitals, they now understood that peace was a choice. They made every day. Dr. Kane's weapons waited in darkness on every human world, sleeping but not dead, ready for the day when humanity might need to remind the galaxy why they were the only intelligent species that had survived on Earth. The universe had learned an important lesson about mistaking human kindness for weakness, their diplomacy for cowardice, or their mercy for inability to do otherwise. Humanity was peaceful by choice, not by nature, and the galaxy would never forget the difference.